Good evening, everyone. Members of the board, Dr. Hayes, Dr. Mast, members of the administration, fellow teachers, community members, and students. For the benefit of everyone in the room, my name is Dominic Giordano. I'm an 8th grade physical science teacher at Terrell Middle School. Okay. With me this evening, helping me, is my counterpart at Terrell Middle School, Ms. Sapreet Dharmi, and my colleagues from Park Middle School, Dr. Richard Minnerly and Ms. Amy Johnson, who also teach grade 8 physical science. Thank you very much for your time this evening. It is an honor and an equal pleasure to share this unique educational experience and our successes with it with all of you. Thanks to the efforts of the science supervisor, Madrula Bajaj, Dr. Hayes, Dr. Mast, and the Education Enrichment Foundation of Scotch Plains, also known as the EEF, a pilot group of our students in science visited the Students to Science Lab. The Students to Science Lab facility is a full-scale commercial laboratory, and our students engaged in a challenging experiment, multiple experiments, side by side with professional scientists using sophisticated state-of-the-art laboratory instruments. On the screen is just their website page. We're going to take you through a few slides in a moment of some of the staff and the students working together with the professionals. Myself, along with my colleagues, had the opportunity to interact with our students in new ways, but also observe them as they worked with industry professionals and they held their own. Some of the students who participated are here this evening, and they will be sharing some of their personal experiences with you as well. We are all very proud of them for the work that they have done and for being here tonight and being so outgoing and willing to share their experiences. But before we get to that, please allow me to provide everyone with just a brief background of the logistics behind this initiative. In addition to teaching science at Terrell, I have the distinct pleasure of serving as a trustee on the Education Enrichment Foundation of Scotch Plains Fanwood. It's a local organization that supports education, whose mission is to strengthen the learning experience and to enhance student achievement by promoting and sponsoring innovative ideas, as well as opportunities to work with advanced technology relative to science, engineering, and math. The acronym most familiar to parents, students, and those in academia and in industry is STEM. And in this capacity, both the district and the EEF formed a partnership. The goals of the organization at the time the decision was made to push this initiative forward were very simple. Develop student leadership, expose them to more experiences in STEM, and have a component for teacher development as well that fosters innovation. These goals are also consistent with those of the district, and as such, the Students to Science nonprofit organization and its fully stocked and fully staffed lab facility was a perfect fit to provide the experience that we were looking for the students and their teachers. Students were nominated by their teachers in conjunction with the building principals to support the philosophy of deepening their interest and appreciation for science. In turn, the tuition for these students to visit the lab 3 times over the course of the year was paid for by the EEF. While it would be ideal for all students to participate in this unique opportunity, and this is certainly the sentiment among my colleagues and myself, limitations in the laboratory limited the number of students who can attend at one time. The lab can accommodate up to 40 students at one time, and so that's what we began with. The students were great, and they handled the challenge of this experience with poise. It is very intimidating for anyone to stand before such sophisticated and very expensive equipment, let alone such people who have such experience. It would be like this, if you may. It'd be like owning a Honda Accord, but having a Lamborghini for the day. You almost wouldn't want to touch the controls, and you would likely approach that experience very cautiously. Our students put on lab coats and the appropriate protective gear and approached the experience like they had a Lamborghini in their driveway. From there, the learning began, and I'm happy and proud to say that they had an open highway to drive. At this time, I'd like to invite the students to come up and share from them what was so profound and memorable. We didn't rehearse nor sit down with them, so we're just as curious to see what they would say about the experience. Let me first introduce them all. We're going to hear from the Terrell students first. Joining us first will be Caroline Gutierrez, and then McKenzie Ramos, followed by Mikey Ramos and David Rosen from Park. So, Caroline, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Caroline Gutierrez, and I go to school at Terrell Middle School. And I had the wonderful opportunity of participating in the Students to Science program this year. I would first just like to thank Mrs. Darmy for nominating me into the program. I benefited greatly from this. I learned so much. And now I'm just going to share with you a few things that we did at the program. So, we were presented with many options on what we could do, and over the course of the trips, we were able to experience different topics. So we did some experiments on ultraviolet light and its effects on materials that can be tested with ultraviolet light, flame tests to differentiate salts and how they react under heat. Very recently, we just went last Friday and we learned about prescription drugs and dissolution rate, their environment that is necessary for them to activate. We did plating with metals and a bunch of other very interesting things. We got to work with actual equipment. One very intriguing one was they called them artificial stomachs, and they are tubs of water with propellers inside that can be set to the temperature and the rotations per minute of an actual human stomach to test in real actual labs to test the dissolution rate of some drugs. And a very, very interesting experiment we did was an oil spill experiment. You all remember the Deepwater Horizon oil spill that took place in April 2010. We were provided with actual samples of sand, current sand from beaches from the oil spill, and we were able to participate in the usage of gas chromatography to identify the levels of carcinogens that are still present in this sand. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. McKenzie?
Hi, I'm McKenzie. I'm at Terrell Middle School too. I'm an 8th grader, and as a student, I love science in school and out, and I love learning about anything that was related to marine biology or human body. So as Caroline said, when we got to learn about how the drugs reacted in a human stomach, it interested me, because I actually got to learn how a drug would actually react. When I got selected for Students to Science, I was shocked about the amount of college graduates who are either not using their degree after college or changing their major out of the science field. I also learned that there are many jobs dealing with science that weren't being used. Before going to the lab, I loved science and after I learned it even more. Instead of sitting inside of a classroom, I got to go into a real lab and do experiments that I didn't think that I could actually do. This program teaches kids how science does relate to their everyday life more than they think. For example, we did a lab that Caroline already said, that we got oil with the sand from the Gulf Coast, and we got to see how the oil could be taken out of the sand and tested, and we could see the results on the computer. I really hope that this program is further continued so other students have the same experience of science that I did.
Thank you, McKenzie. Mikey Ramos?
Hi everyone, I'm Mikey Ramos. I go to Park Middle School and I really like math and science. They're two of my favorite subjects. And in the Students to Science field trips, we went 3 times, and each of the times we had different experiments. We had 4 experiments every time we went, and they'd all be, every trip was a different topic. Friday we did some experiments. One of my favorites was we did with prescription drugs, and we got some of the characteristics of drugs, and we had to test them to see which drugs they were, to see if they were mixed in with others. And as I said, the experiments with the Gulf Coast oil spill, we got to experiment the sand to see if it had carcinogens from the oil spill. We also did some experiments to see how much caffeine is in energy drinks, to see if it was like the correct amount that was on the bottle. We got to do some calculations to see how quickly the dissolution rate of some prescription drugs in the stomach are, like Advil. We got to do all sorts of, we would do anti-inflammatories, painkillers, things like that, and it was a really nice experiment.
Good job, Mikey. Also from Park is David Rosen.
So, I'm David Rosen, and first off, I would like to thank the Education Enrichment Foundation for letting us go on this amazing trip. There's just something about working with acids and lighting stuff on fire that gets students really involved with science. And in a regular science class, we get to do cool experiments maybe a couple of times a marking period. And on this trip, we got to do like 4 in a day. It's just great. You got machines that are like testing stuff you can't even see, counting molecules. And it's just really awesome. You got scientists working side by side who have like 50 patents at like the least. And I know one of the guys, they invented the stealth part of the stealth bomber. That was pretty cool.
Wow.
And just this entire experience was awesome. Thanks.
Good job, David. Let's hear it for everybody. That was really brave to get up there and talk about this. And you all did a great job. And just in reflection and in closing, everything that they said was very accurate. You could see from the pictures, you could see all the facilities. You could do a wide range of things with fume hoods that are like open hearths and could just take toxic fumes right out of the room. So there's really no limitations on what you can experiment with. So this was a great opportunity. Kids loved it. The staff loved it. We look forward to hopefully going back again. Thank you for your support. Thank you to the EEF. Please let me just acknowledge 3 individuals from the EEF who are here. Our Vice President, Brian Rawlins. Okay. Also Mr. Leland McGee, who's a trustee. Did Don ever make it? Don Parisi, who's our president, was going to be here tonight, but I'm sure he's on his way. So when he comes in, we'll tell him that he missed it all. But anyway, thank you so much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board, members of the community. Have a good evening. Okay.
Mrs. Rowland, you want to take this time to do the picture of the kids?
Could we have one with the kids and the teachers too?
Yes.
Can we ask some questions?
Yes, we're going to do that.
Staff in there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
She looks like a student. Kids are bigger than a couple of the teachers.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much. Board, questions or comments? Anyone? Mrs. Warner?
I've heard about this program before, but thanks to each of the students coming up and saying a bit more about what happened, I understood a lot more and got how valuable this is. And I have to say, I'm really impressed with each of you. And I know that there are others, but I'm sure you're representative. But you guys really did an amazing job. And I learned a lot. I'm jealous. It sounds like a great experience, and we're fortunate to have such a great foundation in our community and such great teachers to bring everyone together. So you're blessed, and we are blessed by that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Warner. Anyone else? Ms. Bauer?
I wanted to echo what Dominic said about how well you did when you got up and spoke to us, because I think it is hard, and the camera's rolling and so forth. And I'm just curious how many of you all are thinking about careers in science now. Maybe you were before, or are you now? And I'm just wondering from the students.
Show of hands.
Not to add any more pressure, but if you're interested in speaking, you got to go on the microphone so that it can be shown on TV.
That Mr. Ramos in the back?
David?
I'm seeing some hands going up.
Yeah.
After this trip, you got all those cool machines in there, and I thought it was going to be cool to kind of like innovate new ones. So I thought about the engineer career and going to the magnet next year to pursue that career.
Very good.
Okay.
Well, before going on this trip, I really liked marine biology, and after this trip, I learned more about like human anatomy and more about how like the drugs can react in a human body, and like I was thinking more about becoming a doctor. But both of the program really engages students in like showing them that there's more than just like sitting in a lab. There's like you can go out into the field and do experiments like that would actually like affect humans and like keep people and actually like change people's lives and save people too.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to comment, or?
Why don't we have the students come up, because I have a question for all of you. So come on up to the mic. And if you keep going back and forth, you're just not going to be inclined to answer.
Are there any other questions or comments from board members?
Yeah, but let her.
No, go ahead. You go
I
first.
just wanted to say thank you to the Education Enrichment
Richmond.
Foundation for financing this. And hopefully there'll be bigger and better things in the future.
If I have one.
Dr. Kulakowski?
I want to thank both the teachers and Dominic and the students for coming back to us and telling us everything you did on the trips and the 12 experiments that you have done, because we approve trips and, you know, we encourage them, and now we finally get to see some things that come back, and I'm so glad you were able to enjoy it and actually put the spark of a possibility of a career in one of those fields. So thank you for sharing all of that with us.
I have something to say also. I hope you guys one day come back here later in life and come up with a cure for maybe cancer or something. I know it sounds crazy, but it's possible. There's got to be a cure for that. Maybe it might be one of you guys. You never know.
Thank you, Ms. Shermer. Anyone else? Okay, me. Caroline. Oh no, this is informal, don't worry. Were you aware of the Deepwater Horizon? You didn't need background on it prior to getting the sand and the experiments? Okay, I just was wondering, because although we're talking science as the board, we're always interested in what you're learning in social studies and things like that. Good, thank you. What was the experiment like? Let's jump, Mikey. What was the experiment like with that? Every one of you mentioned the whole sand thing, so I think one of the things I got from what you got out of it was you were able to really do experiments that related to things you knew, or like what McKenzie was saying, maybe helping people, you could equate it to real life things. So what exactly were, you just took samples and how'd you measure it? Well, you got to go on the microphone so they can hear you at home.
We had to separate the sand from the components of the oil from the oil spill, and we had to, there's a amount that's set that's limited to see how much trace of the oil can be left in there, and I believe it was 10 in a million.
Oh, don't get technical. I'm an accountant, so just don't worry. You can talk to me. You make stuff up in science, and I'll say sure. So just I'm broad-based. Just I was curious, like an overview of just.
So, yeah, we had to like dissolve it and separate the components of it and see how much of the oil was left in there. If it had the appropriate amount, then that passed. If it didn't have the appropriate amount, if it had more than that, then it would fail. It was like a test.
And now, David, do you know, like, what the experiments you were doing with staying with the sand and the oil, is that what our government is still doing to check on the oil companies? Or, like, were you replicating things that are happening still, like the EPA is doing?
I'm sure that they're still cleaning up the oil, and the sand samples that we had actually failed the test. There is maybe 100 or so particles in a million, which is not a lot, but it's still bad because those particles could cause cancer.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to go to the beach and be worried about that.
Sure, thank you. McKenzie, you're not off the hook. From the tub that replicates a stomach, that intrigued me too. It sounded kind of cool. So it was just, you used like regular Tylenol or Advil and just all things that a doctor could prescribe you or mom could say for?
Over the counter, like
Okay.
in a jar, and you would take the sample and put it into this glass that had a very high pH level, so the acid in the, like as it would replicate in the stomach, it was in the jars and it wouldn't go through the glass. And it had jars, or the propellers going in moving around the stomach acid to mimic how your stomach moves when you're walking and eating. So it would show how quickly or slowly your pill would dissolve. And then you take water samples and then put it into this different machine that put a laser through it and then read it and then put it onto a computer, and you could read the numbers and see it on a graph of when it would show up as counting the atoms.
Okay, very cool. Very cool, thank you. All right, one final question for Caroline, because you gave a short answer. Just want to give you enough camera time. With that, with the like the drugs that you're prescribed, like with the anti-inflammatory, was the goal to see how long it takes to work or how long it takes to get out of your system?
The goal was to see the dissolution rate, which is how long it takes to activate and dissolve and actually work.
To start getting into the system to be working. Okay. Thank you. I see your teachers there smiling and nodding. So again, as an accountant, it all sounded right to me, but it looks like the scientists in the back all gave their approval too. And with that, Mr. Giordano, Ms. Darmy, Mr. Minnerly, Ms. Johnson, thank you so much, because clearly as they're talking, our students are talking about what they learned there. They didn't learn it all that day or those 3 days there. That was their day, and I hope you guys get that you were able to apply what you've learned. And I think David said you're only able right now to do a few experiments a semester, whereas you were able to do 4 in a day. Unfortunately, it takes a whole bunch of days of being taught things to then be able to apply it. But to our educators in the room, thank you so much, because it really just hearing their experience, hearing them talk off the cuff on what they did and how it applied. I mean, clearly they got it, and it was from what the foundation that you've given during the course of the year for them to be able to touch the thing. So thank you. A commercial for the Education Enrichment Foundation. Mr. McGee.
Come on up.
Mr. Rawlins. And when Mr. Parisi comes.
Don't go.
Thank you so much. That for those out in the TV audience or sitting in the audience, when you see flyers or sometimes emails, there may be an art auction, there may be a battle of the bands, there may be take your date out for Valentine's Day for a steak dinner. If it has EEF or Education Enrichment Foundation attached to that, this is the end result of what those fundraising events do. They really supplement, and without the help of the EEF, our students would not be able to get what they are getting right now and the fruits of what we just saw tonight. Mr. McGee, Mr. Rawlins, thank you so much.
We generally don't get to see the fruits of our labor. So on behalf of the Education Enrichment Foundation, I'd like to congratulate all of you.
Yeah, by the way, this is Mr. Leland McGee, and you take the microphone now. I just wanted to plug the foundation and turn it over to you to say a few words.
I'm pretty much done. I really wanted to congratulate them, because, like I said, we don't get to see often what the fruits of our labors are. We just labor. And the labor is for them. And so it's really nice to be able to see you, to have you come up and speak. So thank you very much, and congratulations to you.
Mr. Rawlins, do you want to say a few words?
If I could. The piece, it's actually very simple, like he said about the labor piece. And sometimes we're here, fundraising during a spring Sunday, or an evening in the fall we're fundraising. But I can tell you this, that it's very, very rewarding to see our efforts going to see children grow and really be able to experience things that they might not otherwise. And at bare minimum, enhance all the wonderful things they're learning in Wisconsin Family School District. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity as well.
Certainly. Thank you.
Don't go away.
Dr. Hayes, you want to?
So, first of all, I want to express my thanks to the Education Enrichment Foundation. Mr. McGee has been with this foundation now for how many years?
About 10.
He has given his heart and his soul to this work, and I really, he has seen this group come to gel and come alive, and it's largely through his efforts that the Education Enrichment Foundation is where it is today, and I want to acknowledge and thank you for that.
Yeah.
And for the students, I have a question for each of you. I'd like you to think for a minute. You know how your teachers say, pair share, talk to one another for a moment? I want you to pair share with each other just for a moment, and I want you to then answer this question. Did your understanding of what a scientist is and does, and the kinds of successes a scientist can have in life, change as a result of your going to these lab visits? Pair share. So sometimes students have an idea about what scientists look like or how they act. When you got to meet the real scientists, not that your teachers aren't wonderful scientists in their own right, did any of those impressions that you have change?
Well, I think we all think that a scientist is some crazy person sitting behind a desk in a lab coat, crazy hair and goggles, but they're all really nice, but they're still wearing the lab coats and the goggles.
Wait, excuse me, is Mr. Giordano your teacher? Okay, just wondering.
But they're all really nice, and they could use their knowledge as going to college and their love of science and express it to other kids and share their of science, and yeah.
That's a really good part. What about the rest of you?
Honestly, yes. My vision of an actual scientist, as McKenzie said, did change. They aren't simply people who just sit and do experiments. The experiments are not only done, they are taken further, they're analyzed, they're used to benefit the community and even broader than the community. And I think that was great that we got to see that have the opportunity to see that.
Sometimes you think of scientists, or I used to think like it was every scientist's job to try and cure cancer. But after going here, you see all the little things they do that actually add up. Like the next time you have a headache and you take one of those pills and it works in like 2 minutes, it could have been like 20 minutes, and then they made it better and got it down so that you'd be happier.
Faster.
Yeah.
Good answer.
That's brand name, not generic.
Well, I learn more of like how scientists, like what they do. They don't just sit in a dark room, have some crazy breakthrough out of luck in the middle of the night. They do work, they do experiments, there's trial and error. One of the scientists, she was talking on the first trip, she was talking about how she's had a couple like inventions, she's like discovered a few things just because she didn't invent the cell phone or laptops. She still has had like important things that's benefited the rest of the community.
And did they have, you talked for a moment about their trial and error. What does a scientist have to be able to do to get through all those parts of things that don't work?
Well, they have to, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and when there's something that goes right, you just got to keep doing what goes right until you find the solution to a problem.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, it does sound like this experience that you had helped you to learn a lot about how to persevere and find the right way to answer questions, and recognize that we often learn more from what goes wrong than from that one piece that goes right. So scientists are always in that mode of the trial and error, but it's informed trial and error. They don't just do it randomly. They really do give thought to it, but they have to keep persevering. And if there's one lesson I hope that you all take from that, is that if you continue to persevere in your studies the way those scientists have persevered, then you'll all have very, very bright futures ahead of you. So you're all off to high school, and we're really waiting to hear good things about what's going to happen as you continue your studies. And if you do decide to pursue science, come back and let us know. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to the
Mrs.
parents.